It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. So this video is going to be having a look at a project that I've recently completed, I guess is a good way of describing it, that I wanted to share and talk through because it was one of the positive stories, I guess, that I had from the COVID experience of 2020. With COVID in Australia, we sort of had it relatively under control in some sense compared to other countries around the world. However, we did have lockdowns in a number of states and cities. And the impact of lockdown is quite significant from a social aspect, from a economic aspect, but also the impact on people it varies a lot. For schools, especially year 12s, final year for high school here in Australia, it can be quite devastating because they still had their examinations to do and they still had to have their learning and all those processes. And there was a mad scramble for remote learning to be set up and incorporated. But the government here also said that if there were children who couldn't do remote learning, then teachers still had to go in and actually teach in person, which obviously put them at risk, put children at risk, put their families at risk, and so on and so forth. A lot of hoo-ha, a lot of politics about that, but at the end of the day, it all worked out in the sense that we were able to keep COVID infections and the impact relatively low. And I say relatively because we did have people pass away, which, my heartfelt thoughts go out to those people who were affected. Some of it could have been avoidable. Who knows? Very hard to say. Now, my involvement, I guess, in this sense was that somebody on the mechanical keyboard community locally here in Australia made a comment on Facebook and said that they were interested in having a macro pad, if there was something available that was small and relatively cheap, because they felt that the kids that they were teaching, because they were a school teacher, were being so heavily impacted that they wanted to do something nice and different for them. They wanted to take them through the journey of building a mechanical keyboard macro pad, and it was going to be a learning exercise because it was for a physics class. Now, there are other options out there that already exist, but a lot of them somewhat a little bit more expensive, and lead times, delay times on purchasing and stock availability and things like that made it really challenging. So I reached out and said, depending on what you're after, it's actually really easy to make one, to design one, to come up with one and fabricate it yourself. And running it at a very simplistic level can be quite affordable depending on how many that you're after and the size of the class that you're looking to fulfill. So had a really good discussion with them, and I said, not going to charge you for my time and efforts to put it in, and you can send me whatever you want afterwards when we have this all together and we know that it works. So I developed what I call the DRMP, which is Don's Rotary Macro Pad, and I think it took off really well. So let's have a look at the DRMP. This is the DRMP in its glory. It's a 3-piece FR4 macro pad. Now, this back plate is for the actual school and class. So the kids here, I thought about blanking out, but you know what? Their names aren't exactly really anything that you can dox them by, even if you know what that place is. If I get in trouble for it, I'll get in trouble for it. The logo and the drawing came from the actual teacher themselves, and they wanted to celebrate remote learning at its best. This is obviously the guts of it. It's a 3x3 macro pad, but it has a rotary encoder position by default on the top left position. What made this interesting for me to design personally was I kind of went a little bit above and beyond that, because I designed it in a way that you could have it flippable. So you could actually have the encoder on the top right position as well, and all that required would be to build it in the correct order on the correct side and flipping some settings around in QMK when you actually build the QMK environment. So it was a fun build, and I also used the staggered zigzag footprint from Kibio for the Pro Micro, which allows you to essentially hot swap the Pro Micro as well if you wanted to, rather than hard soldering it in. A FR4 plate with an actual orientation, because the header bar on the top is actually thicker than on the bottom, just fractionally, because of the fact that we had included a place to put some RGB lighting as well as a reset switch on it. And initially I had tried to write build instructions on the back of the plate, but I made some errors in it that I didn't realize until I had them fabricated. It's not so much that you couldn't build it with these instructions, but there is assumed knowledge, and I was like, I didn't feel happy or comfortable with them being the only instructions available. Because while you could build it, you would probably make some mistakes, and that would be problematic. So I said to the teacher, I said to him, look, I need to redo the instructions. I've already built the QMK, it's already sitting there in my GitHub and everything else, but I want to rebuild the instructions because I wanted you guys to have a much better experience for it. So I did. I rewrote it completely, and it turned into a 5-page instruction set, and I fully wrote it out using my tech writing experience and cautions, notes and warnings and images, descriptors, covering safety, fully stepped out and things like that. So I was much more comfortable after I'd actually completed this, and I actually left it to my local community on Discord to help me proofread it, and they caught things that I had actually missed as well. So it was really good that I could go back and fix it up. And then on top of that, I was like, well, they need to program it in QMK because I didn't push it into Configurator, plus Rotary encoders aren't currently managed in Configurator. I don't know if they ever will or anytime soon, so I did a QMK mapping instruction as well. Now, of course, there are some things that you kind of have to have beforehand, and I didn't want to get into that on setting up, like VS Code or things like that, and having to install QMK Toolbox and whatnot, but I provided the links to it so that you could actually look at it and understanding QMK key codes and stuff like that. So, details in regards to getting to where the actual files were kept, and then editing it, showing the actual layout, describing what things are and what it means, example text and whatnot, as well as modifying, the actual key map, as well as punching it out, using the encoder coding, and compiling, for example, plus getting it into Toolbox and flashing for actual end results. So I built one of these. I had to build one of these so that I knew that it even worked before I could release these and send these off to the teacher. And here is my one that I built and put together with the Rotary encoder. Now, I don't have a spare knob, so that's why it's bare, but you know what, doesn't matter, can always make one, get one later on, fill it with keycaps, just straight up Gator on reds, and it works a treat. There's the actual standoffs, the Pro Micro there, lovely, fun little pad. I didn't bother putting any feet on that, any bump-ons, because I don't really need any. That's not what I would need for my scratched up workspace desk here anyway. So that went off, and I didn't really hear anything furthermore except for the fact that they received it, which was great. And then I saw on Facebook a post which really made me light up, and I was so happy because there's the pad. So they obviously built it in class. Teacher supplied them with the macro pad. They had fun building it with him and other mates, and being introduced to the keyboard hobby. So success is really what I want to say about that. And it felt really great to be able to help out that teacher put together something like this that brought a bit of fun, a bit of joy, a bit of happiness to the kids that were being held in some very challenging conditions during the COVID period of lockdown, down where they were. And yeah, now I've got a little macro pad as well in my arsenal of creations. So thank you very much for reaching out to the community and asking for that help, and thank you very much for actually letting me help you and being so understanding of the mistakes that I made and rectifying it. And you know what, I think overall really positive experience. So what I want to say here is, it's really easy to build one of these. When I say build, I mean design, create, using KiCad and stuff like that. If you have projects like this that you need help for, reach out. There's heaps of people who can help you design and build one, or give you the understanding and skills. I've got some videos on this channel about actually using KiCad, one of the very, very older versions of it, because KiCad's now like, version 5 point something, I believe. Or, if you're not in a rush, reach out to me and I'd be happy to have a look, and if I've got the time and capacity, also put something like this together for you, depending on whatever your use case is. Of course, if you're interested in doing it from a commercial point of view, that's a little bit different compared to something like this, which is community based and orientated. Now, if you're also a teacher and you teach locally within schools in Australia here, and you're somehow seeing this, if you're interested in getting hold of these kits or having it customized for you, because it's quite easy to change the silk screen on the back of this, as well as for me to update and change the instruction set details so it doesn't say, Sax Physics, reach out. Let's have a conversation, because the hard work on this is already done. All that's left, if you're interested in getting some of these and using it for your school, for your classes, is purchasing, right? Stock availability of the parts and the logistics of getting that together. So yeah, let's have a conversation if you think that's going to help you, and we can go from there. So that's it. Thank you very much for checking out this video. Love and appreciate everybody, as usual, who comes along and hangs out and enjoys seeing the little wacky creations that I get up to. If you like this kind of stuff, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, please, of course, hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell button, and of course that share button if you want other people to check out my video content as well. So thank you again for coming along, and of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.